Hi, boys and girls. Welcome back to the Carla and Crappy Show. We are in that amazing part of the bowl season, just kind of the peak of the whole thing, where there are multiple games each day. We're taping on Friday. There are two games on right now: the Holiday Bowl and the Liberty Bowl. And Carla, while there's a lot of griping about the first round playoff games, the bowl games largely have been spectacular.
Have been pretty spectacular. Yeah, it's been a really fun start to bowl season, and we still have a ways to go, even as we're recording this now. But yeah, okay, so cheers to Diego Pavia. That Birmingham Bowl was a hot mess, friends. If you haven't seen it, go find replays because it got chippy. The officials were kind of out of control.
Yeah.
We had an unsportsmanlike conduct against the Georgia Tech bench. And then we had an hour-long weather delay because why not? Let's throw some lightning in the mix of all of this. And so the game actually finished on ESPNU, I think it was. I think they moved it over there because the Liberty Bowl it's been just glorious bowl season, exactly the way it was meant to be.
Navy beating Oklahoma earlier today.
I called that on Bowlapalooza. Nobody heard it. Because Dan asked me what I thought about Navy and Oklahoma, and I said, "Oh, Navy all the way," and he laughed.
Okay.
There you go, Dan.
Did you have Navy over Oklahoma?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
I don't specifically recall what I had said at the time. But yeah,
Dan just asked me. It was kind of an off-the-cuff comment during while we were talking about Army.
Yeah, I mean, this is also just hurting Alabama's strength of schedule even more. And
yes,
you hate to see it.
It's so sad.
That's a great point.
We always begin with a look back, and there are a couple sort of different segments of things to look back upon. We will start, AJ, with you, and what have you seen? Again, non-playoff games, just the bowl games that have been on so far, and you're allowed to say the Holiday Bowl, which is 28-21 in the second quarter. But what have you seen from the bowl games that you've liked so far?
As of right now, we're recording on December 27th. Currently, Crappy is in the lead with 2 wins in the Bowlapalooza scorecard.
Yes.
And the rest of us are all tied with 1. So there is that.
Okay.
I will say I tuned in to the end of the Hawaii Bowl, as God intended. And as the clock struck midnight, they were still playing football because that game went to 6 overtimes because God said it's time for more Hawaii football.
It is.
At least a game played where Hawaii plays football. And that game was stupid. It was so stupid. And that's the correct way the bowl should be. I've seen a lot of just oh yeah, that's a lopsided score because one of these teams cared a lot. One of these teams didn't care so much. But I've also seen a lot of games where it's hey, no one knows what's going on, and there's a million points. Hey, look at you, Pitt and Toledo. So sure, this is what bowl season is for. It is for these silly games at the end of the season. As a reminder, these are silly games. Keyword is silly. And if you would like to be a person who takes things too seriously, you can be Pat Narduzzi, where you lose your 5 overtime game and then immediately leave the field. Don't shake hands, no nothing. You're gonna be mad about losing the whichever bowl it was. I was gonna say the Little Caesars Bowl, but it's the former Quick Lane Bowl. It's that one.
It's the Game Above Sports Bowl.
Oh, that's right. And he was the Game Above Sports, which is, I guess, what Pat was playing. He was like, this is not about sports. This is about the game that's above it. And I'm out. Hands up if you remember what Game Above Sports was.
I do not.
Carla, can you remember
refresh?
What it was?
Can you refresh?
It's literally refreshing because it's a body spray. It's made by the people who make Axe. So Game
I thought that was the Art of Sport.
Was that the Art of Sport?
Was that the Art of Sport?
Art of Sport.
Oh no, that's right. Game Above Sports was the NIL fund. That's
okay.
Right. That was founded by the Michigan State guys, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's the Art of Sport is the
Yes.
body spray. Game above sports. Got it. Thank you, Carla, for keeping me honest there. I was like, I thought that was the body spray. Anyways, Pat, you're a wiener. Stop it.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. For sure. Carla, what has impressed you about bowl season so far?
Well, I think the funniest game that I saw was the Potato Bowl because
Mhm.
it just continues to live up to expectations.
It does.
We ended up with a game that went double overtime, so
Yeah.
extra fries, everybody.
Mhm.
And then we television missed the fry bath. The only way that we saw the fry, like, how do you miss the fry bath, guys? Like, come on.
It's the whole
But
point.
It's like the whole thing.
it's
Yeah,
the whole
it is.
thing.
It
And
is.
but the problem is that it went to double overtime, and like the end of the game was so chaotic, with the stop and double overtime that like it just got lost in the fray. But then we had like the best quote of all time from the Northern Illinois head coach that I'm not sure I can repeat on our
We
suitable
will
for friendly.
we will link to it in the show notes, maybe. I mean,
Okay.
we can do that.
Insert poop emoji here.
Sure, you can talk. You sure you could say it.
Can I say it?
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yes.
The
go ahead.
coach
Yeah,
said
you're
that
good.
it was
You're
the
good.
best dump of all time or something along those best
It
dump
was the
of his
greatest
life.
dump of his. It was the greatest dump of his career.
Yeah.
It's one of the greatest things I've
Yes,
ever
my
heard
friend.
on television. This is a reminder. This is the same coach who, after beating Notre Dame, cried on national television correctly and emotionally, and it was the right thing to do,
Yes.
and deeply inspiring. And we love him for that. And he also said, "This is the greatest dump of my
Dump of my
career."
career.
Dump of
You
my
know,
career.
people could say multitudes, is what we're finding.
Yes.
In the same season. It's just welcome to 2024. I love it. So that game was just a gift that just kept on giving, and yeah,
Uh-huh.
all kinds of fun stuff. Like Coastal Carolina getting their behinds kicked at a bowl game at their own facility.
Yes.
That was a
Yeah.
home bowl game, and somehow we missed that. I don't remember. But Meep ran all over them.
They did.
Yeah, the Navy Vanderbilt today.
Mhm.
Yeah, the Toledo Pitt game got real chippy. Yeah, it's been a fun
It
bowl
really
season
has.
so
Really
far.
has. The Pitt game, Toledo Pitt was one of my favorites. I thought Mac might get a sweep last night, but Bowling Green and Arkansas State, BG could not quite keep up. That was a 38-31 win on the part of Arkansas State. So I think the MAC is at 500 during bowl season, because of Western's loss. And because of was that Western Michigan? I think that's correct. But it was because of OU's win against Jacksonville State, 30-27. Parker Navarro was a total hero, and OU's defense played well when it needed to. Got some timely stops. Obviously, didn't keep it from for being such a totally tight game, but that is the first time the Bobcats have ever won 11 games in a season. Arguably the best season in Ohio University football history. So super pleased about that. And then the very next day, we moved on to the first round of the playoffs. Actually, there was the first round game was that evening, was the Friday of the 20th. AJ, before we start talking about exactly how chalky to the extreme the first round was, did anything that stood out from you from any of the games in particular?
I think it was it all of the games I think were very much showed the difference in resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They showed the real difference between the like tiers of teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame, Ohio State, Texas,
Penn State.
Penn State. Sorry, Carla.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to go. I was like, I know I'm like going through the map. I'm going through like the day. Crap, I'm missing one. All of those schools recruit at a top 10 level.
Mm-hmm.
All of those teams have depth for days. And I think that showed in especially the Ohio State Tennessee game, which was, I think, the most interesting one depth wise, because you had Dylan Sampson from Tennessee, who gets hurt. Squirrel White, their leading receiver, gets hurt. Holly Anderson said this on the Shutdown Fullcast. She is a deep, lifelong Tennessee fan and alumni. She specifically pointed out, she was like, okay, a lot of people will call these, they would say that these are excuses, whatever. Imagine that same thing happens to Ohio State. They lose Quidshot Junkins, they lose Jeremiah Smith, they lose, a few other players. It's like, and behind them is Travion Henderson and Emeka Bunga. And you have more behind that. That's the difference. That's always been the difference. And it really played out. I got asked by a number of my friends about like the quality of the first round games and blowouts and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, yeah, everything here is fine. And they were like, what do you mean everything's fine? I'm like, yeah, this is the difference in the sport, kids. This is how it goes. Yeah. I've had to explain this to people who are big NFL people too. When you have 133 teams versus 32 teams, there's 100 more teams. And so their players are spread out and or consolidated in certain ways. And specifically when there's no salary cap, when there's no draft, when there's no, like the NFL builds parity into the product. It builds parity into the league because it doesn't want to have bad games, right? It's a bad TV product.
Unless the Browns are involved in them.
I mean, listen, the Jags and the Raiders played this weekend. And that's just as bad as you thought it was. But
there was that.
Because the parity is built into the system, you don't have that very often.
Right.
At the same time, in college, there's no parity, right? There's very much the haves and have-nots. And so that's really what happens here. I think there was a lot of people who didn't really understand that and got a very distinct glimpse of it over the last weekend.
For sure. Carla, thoughts about Penn State or any of the other 4 first-round games?
Well, I put some of my Penn State analysis into the breakdown of the Fiesta Bowl coming up, so I don't want to dwell too much on that, but I will say the one thing that I wanted to bring up there, and I agree with what AJ is saying here, but I'm going to add to that and say it also shows the home field advantage and why that is such a big deal, because I can attest that Penn State's second pick 6 almost entirely can be attributed to the Beaver Stadium crowd.
Particularly at the outset of that game and at a few different points in the first half, SMU was clearly rattled. And it was crowd noise. It absolutely was crowd noise.
Yeah, they couldn't hear. And that whole sequence, I went back and I was listening to the second quarter, was not watching the second quarter, and I went back and rewatched the second quarter. And just watching that whole sequence, that defense was giving a lot of pressure. They got sacked. They were behind the line to gain. They had to call timeout right before the pick 6. The pick 6 was thrown coming out of a timeout, so they couldn't hear. And then that happens, and like that's 100% due to Beaver Stadium, right? And yes, the defense was really good, and the defense was extremely opportunistic, which is what we need this week. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But that proved it. That home field was a contributing factor in all 4 of those games, I believe. The second thing that it does is it comes back to this discussion that we had during Bowlapalooza about people complaining about that the like winning your conference should be the advantage that you get, like the automatic berth should be what you get, not the automatic bye. Because I think had you put these games back into like the regular seedings, like, and not mess with the seedings so that like you win your conference, top 5 conference champions, like you're in, but you don't automatically get the bye. Right. I think you would have seen much more parity in these first round games. That's right. Because what ended up happening is you had teams like Penn State, Ohio State that didn't win their conference that had to play in the first round game. Had you gone by the seedings, Penn State would have had the bye because they were the 4, right? And so like, I think that's kind of what's messing up the quality of the first round games is the double win that you get if you win your conference. If college football is concerned about these first round games being blowouts, get rid of that. Okay. Let the 5 top conference champions make the playoff. Absolutely. But get rid of that being the extra bye. And I think you'll see much more parity very quickly in the playoff, and you'd end up with a very different playoff scenario. So, I wasn't disappointed. I mean, yeah, the games weren't necessarily as competitive as we thought. But I learned a lot watching all 4 of those games. And I think we're set up for some interesting matchups coming up in the next week.
Okay. Okay.
Just to
yeah.
kind of go through two of those things. One, I didn't know Notre Dame could get loud. I didn't know that was a thing they did. They got loud.
I can attest that they do. They do. It's
I
not a
think it's
particularly
also
big building, but yeah, they really do.
I also think that it's a difference in the way that ESPN mic'd the building
Yes.
than NBC does. NBC doesn't sound loud on NBC.
That's a
On
good point.
ESPN,
Okay.
I think they did. I think they changed the way, or they did the audio differently because the crowd was super loud.
Mhm.
And there's been big games on NBC that Notre Dame has been the home game, the Bush Push game, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
That's a huge game and a huge moment, and it doesn't sound that way on the audio.
Mhm.
So yeah, I 100% think the home field advantage thing is big. And to Carla's point, if you would have had the just give the top four, so that would have been Oregon, Georgia, Texas, and Penn State, the first round buys.
Mhm.
You would have had Notre Dame hosting Clemson. Because I'm going based on just general seedings here.
Mhm.
You would have had Notre Dame hosting Clemson, Ohio State hosting Arizona State.
Okay.
You would have had Tennessee hosting SMU, and you would have had Indiana hosting Boise State. I think Indiana gets to the second round there,
Mhm.
right? Because they would be the hometown crowd instead of being at Notre Dame. SMU looked lost under the lights for quite a while in the ACC championship game, and they got lost under the lights against Penn State too.
Yeah.
It happens. So I think, honestly, though, I think the right teams got in, and it's unsurprising that the better teams with home field won their games. Nothing here is wrong. I think I think the Carla's absolutely right. I think the big shift you'll probably see is a change where the conference champions don't get buys; they just get the berths, and you'll start to see this kind of play out. It'll play out a lot like the basketball tournament does, where you have like the number one seed, like Duke, doesn't win the ACC championship, but they're still the number one seed in the tournament. Like it doesn't just because you won the ACC doesn't give you the number one seed.
Right.
I again, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about Ohio State's game. Interesting in terms of football stuff. A couple points to make. I remember the 2000 season, which turned out to be John Cooper's last season at Ohio State. It ended with the loss to Michigan. It ended in the regular season, and then a loss in one of the Central Florida bowl games, I think to South Carolina. It was clear at that point that John Cooper had lost the team. That staff had lost the team. There were a number of players who were not eligible for the bowl game just because of academics, and to get through an entire term, I think Ohio State was still on quarters at that point. One starting wide receiver, a starting wide receiver at The Ohio State University, did not have anyone checking up on him. He went through, and I don't remember the guy's name. He went through fall quarter. He came out of fall quarter with a 0.0. He was Blutarski'd, and no one knew about it or did anything about it. There's just this incredible disconnect between the staff and whatever infrastructure you have in place to support the team and the team itself. I was curious and yes, concerned whether or not that would be the case at Ohio State this time with the loss to Michigan. It clearly was not. I was really happy to see the team's demeanor, attention to detail, and performance. I was happy to see that the coaching staff make the decisions that they did. We'll talk about that in a little bit more depth. Also, interesting dynamic in that there were so many damn Tennessee fans in the building. Clearly, there were a lot of Ohio State fans who paid for Christmas, selling tickets to folks from Knoxville. And I don't know exactly how the playoff ticketing system worked, but there had to be some of that to get that many Tennessee fans in the building.
I want to shout out the Ohio State. I want to shout out the Ohio State team who sends out like the pre-sale code to their season ticket holders.
Uh-huh.
The pre-sale code was
Yes.
OSUFB. It was very
Tough one.
creative.
That's
that
a tough
no
one.
one would have known at all. By the way, just a quick Google here. John Cooper his last game was the Outback Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, congratulations on
Was it South
Florida?
Was it South Carolina?
It was.
Okay.
It was South Carolina. So I mean, I think the big thing here, at least with Ohio State, was they came back and they looked angry. They were like, "Oh no,
Absolutely.
no!" And I think this is actually the difference in what. Let's go back to, was it last year that they lost to Missouri in the Cotton Bowl?
Yes. And
Right?
I am a little bit different in that I wrote that game off. The quarterback situation at that point.
Because yes,
the starters left. The backup got hurt in the first quarter, and you're playing a guy who has not seen a college game basically at all against a good defense. And it's just like, this is not happening. So,
but I think the difference here is you had, instead of the starter leaving for the draft, you had the starter staying because he wanted to play in the playoff. I think that's the difference. It's a New Year's Six Bowl. The New Year's Six Bowl doesn't matter,
right?
As a concept, as a construct, that doesn't matter. It's a very prestigious bowl, but people sat out of the game. I think it was Kenny Pickett sat out of the Pitt Michigan State one. Was that the Orange Bowl? The Sugar Bowl. Was the one in Atlanta. And so when you have that, you just have players sitting out. Now they're like, no, we're staying. We're all here. We're all locked in. We're going to try to go win a ring. That's, I think, the difference that the playoff being expanded provides overall to everybody. I did get asked a lot about, like, okay, why did this happen? Whatever, this is all terrible. I'm like, do you guys remember the 14 playoff? Do you guys remember? Do you guys remember how many absolutely crap clunker games we had in the 14 playoff where the average score was 40-20 in the semifinals? Those are the top 4 teams.
31-0. Ohio State, Clemson.
The Big Ten and Pac-12 combined to score 3 points over the course of 3 years.
Yes, I do.
Sorry, it was 10 over 3 years. Yeah. Like, y'all, it's not like this got better or worse. That's the thing I'm mad about. I think Carla is right. I think the fix is going to be that they just go based off of the rankings and not off of the magical seeding that they put together. And I think that will bring the parity back. I think it'll allow for some upsets to happen, and I think it'll be more interesting.
Okay.
But hey, that's next year. We still got a whole playoff to go through.
Sure. AG, I think you've answered my next question, which is the criticism, and it's not exclusively ESPN, but it's especially noticeable coming from ESPN talking heads because they're the ones who are broadcasting these games. Is the criticism warranted? AG, I think I can speak for you, and I say no. It is not.
No, I think the big thing that I would really like is for Kirk Herbstreit to find the nearest mute button. He's not very good at that part, but this was the part that I struggled with throughout the entire day of all of the the parody. We really hope for better games, blah, blah, and it's like no one says that when the wild card game in the NFL is happening.
Right.
Why are we mad at Indiana? There was some act like you've been there before with Indiana. They literally haven't been. This is the greatest season in the history of Indiana football.
Exactly.
What are you talking about?
Exactly.
There's we should be celebrating the fact that Indiana made the playoff.
Yep.
That they had one loss on the season. They were an 11-1 team, and their season didn't end the way they wanted it to, and it didn't look great. And Kurt Signetti maybe stay in the locker room instead of coming out of game day to talk nonsense. But this is a different world. And it should be celebrated that Indiana made the playoff. It should be celebrated that SMU made the playoff, that they had a wonderful season, and it didn't end the way you wanted to. That's perfectly fine. That's a factual statement. It didn't end, they wanted to win that game, and they didn't. The consternation about what about all these blowouts? I'm sorry, I've watched multiple Ohio State playoff blowouts with Crappy. I've watched them with him. It doesn't feel great.
Nope.
But
Was
That's
31 nothing that Clemson game. I started watching it at your house,
Yeah.
I
Yeah. You
believe.
started watching that
Yeah.
one in my house, and then you left, and it didn't get better.
It
So
did
it
not.
wasn't my house. It wasn't like a superstition thing.
I needed to find a third house to go try, but that did not work.
Yeah.
Carla, I mean,
Yep.
I obviously we all watch at least parts of these games. Sean McDonough threw the entire Big Ten conference under the bus toward the end of the IU Notre Dame game. We did touched on Herb Street, although he's kind of walked his comments back sort of a little bit, maybe. Um, is the criticism warranted? Is it off base? Is it ESPN pushing their SEC product? Where did that come from?
Well, so I would say that like sure, yeah, you're gonna down talk the conference that you don't own the media rights deal for, but I
Mhm.
want to like shake somebody up at Bristol and say, you're the ones that helped come up with this.
Yeah.
Like you helped negotiate these rights. You essentially helped make the committee make these decisions that this was the way you wanted the playoff to be run. And
Mhm.
everyone was like, yeah, sure, that sounds great. Let's go with it.
Mhm.
And made these decisions. And then you ended up with a lackluster product and you're going to throw it back on the committee.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like, let's talk about talking out of both sides of your mouth. Right.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, so, I mean, maybe what they're trying to do here is to try to like throw some leverage into the conversation about like maybe we need to change this for next year. And they're trying to put that out there now and say, well, everybody was talking about this. Everybody's talking about this. Not never mind the fact that they were the ones forcing the narrative.
Right.
Um, I think maybe that's part of what's happening here because they realized, that partway through the first day, that like, oh, these could be blowouts, and maybe we should start, pushing the narrative so that we can get rid of the first round buys. I don't know. It's definitely unwarranted.
Mhm.
I can say it's the first real time that I remember seeing a narrative being pushed this hard.
Yeah.
Usually there are narratives being pushed, but they're a little bit more subtle. This was just blatantly out there the entire weekend, um, from all fronts.
Mhm.
Um, completely unwarranted.
Mhm.
Completely unwarranted. These games went pretty much the way that we all thought they were going to go.
Mhm.
Yeah, this was the mountain that you built. You have to live with it.
Yeah. Yeah. The SEC versus the world narrative kind of collapsed a little bit after the game in Columbus.
Yep.
It obviously collapsed further with Oklahoma losing to Navy today. Um, there weren't surprises here. Um, IU was, I mean, the final score of that game was it's just a 10-point spread, and I don't remember what the line was to start with. It, SMU played as I expected. Um, Indiana, I don't know. I don't know what to expect from them. But they went through a power conference schedule. Granted, not a great one. That's just the luck of the draw. But they did it with one loss, and they did it with the biggest margin of victory on average in the country. They absolutely deserve to be where they were. Um, and SMU did too. SMU made the step from a group of five conference to a power four conference schedule. Um, they damn near won their conference playoff game, and they should have. They were where they should have been. Um, there are growing pains when you make that switch, and playing at Penn State in front of a whiteout crowd is one of those growing pains. That is a thing that they will be able to build on because I know from experience that is not an easy thing to do by any stretch of the imagination.
I think the big
Yeah.
thing that I think ESPN was doing a lot of water carrying for SEC things, and there were a lot of people who thought Bama should have got in. Let me be incredibly clear here. Every single team who won playing the way they played at home in that environment, Alabama's getting smoked by all four of them, and it ain't even close. Texas was favored by 10.5 over Clemson. They won by 14.
Mhm.
Penn State was favored by 8.5 over SMU. They won by 28. Ohio State was favored by 7 over Tennessee. They won by, math is being hard for me right now. Is that
bunch.
35? No,
Thereabouts.
25.
Yeah,
By 25. Man, 25 points. That's a really big spread. It would make people think that you lost really badly. It would be a shame if that happened in the second to last week of the season in Norman, Oklahoma, Alabama. And then Notre Dame was favored by 8.5. They won by 10.
Yeah.
Like Vegas kind of nailed it.
These games landed where they were supposed to land.
I think the big thing is you're going to take the only thing I can think is ESPN might have not been happy about the ratings drop off for
Maybe.
Indiana Notre Dame.
Mhm.
And if they would have had Alabama in the playoff, Alabama does draw eyeballs. Does Alabama
Absolutely.
put
Absolutely.
more eyeballs on a certain game? Do they do any better? No.
Mhm.
But do they maybe draw more eyeballs than Indiana or SMU? Yeah, probably.
Mhm.
I think that's the other part here. But I think you'll see some structure changes happen. I don't think it'll be much. I don't think you're going to go from 12 to 14. I don't think you're going to go from 12 to 16. It should go to 24. But we're never going to get that because people think that 24 games is too long, even though FCS D2 and D3 have been doing it for like decades at this point.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Speaking of FCS football,
What?
did you guys watch the semifinals of the FCS?
I had them on. Yes, I did.
If
I had
if
them
you
on
got
too.
bored
And
with Penn State
fun.
SMU, Dakota marker. Oh, North Dakota State, South Dakota State was playing at the same time as Penn State SMU, and it was a battle. And it was two teams that hate each other a whole bunch. And North Dakota State beats South Dakota State to prevent South Dakota State from going to the championship game for the third year in a row.
Right.
And North Dakota gets their second win of the season against a team they had lost the last 5 in a row to.
Mhm.
And at the end of the game, Bryce Lance, who is Trey Lance's younger brother, catches a one-handed full extension, 1 foot inbounds catch to win the game.
Yes.
An absolute amazing play. And at the end of the game, as the confetti's coming down, they're interviewing the quarterback from North Dakota State, who is graduating, who is going on to probably go pro in something other than football.
Mhm.
And he said, they were like, what does it mean to beat South Dakota State here? And he's like, I can finally say it now. I hate them. I hate losing to them.
Yeah.
I hate South Dakota State.
Mhm.
I don't ever want to lose to them again. And to get 2 in a row with them, I love it. I love it so much. I hate the Jackrabbits. And I'm just like, oh, son, I love you letting that hate off your chest.
Yes.
I love knowing that you felt that right here, right in the middle. And just him going off on that. The Montana State, South Dakota State game was less good. South Dakota kept it close, but then kind of ran out of gas. Montana State has very, very good players. So Montana State, North Dakota State on January 6th for the FCS championship should be incredible. Very excited about that.
I will, as my final thought, I might mention the D3 title game, but
yeah, we'll stay
we'll
D3
we'll come to that. We'll come to that. As we were kicking around the idea, discussing what was going to go into this show, obviously we were going to talk about the quarterfinal games, which begin on New Year's Eve with Penn State and Boise State. But Carla made the suggestion, looking at the slate during the day on Tuesday, on New Year's Eve day. I'm like, yeah, this is. We mentioned the Cheez-It Bowl during Bowlapalooza, but these other 3 games are interesting and worth looking at. So we're going to do a quick rundown. This is departing from our tradition a little bit. A quick rundown of the 3 bowl games from New Year's Eve, and then we will do the 4 quarterfinal games, which begin on New Year's Eve, not the New Year's Eve, which would be the 30th, but New Year's Eve, the evening of New Year's Eve, I think is what
we all followed that.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, that's good. I appreciate the help. So let's take a look. Again, at the outset, these games are all on Tuesday, December 31st. I know you're not working, or maybe you're working a half day or something, but that would be perfect because these start at noon. They begin at noon on ESPN in the Rylie Quest Bowl in Tampa, Florida. I don't. What did this one used to be called?
This was
This is the old Outback
Was this
Bowl.
the Outback? Okay.
Yeah,
this
we
is at
traded people getting free appetizers for cybersecurity software. This is where we're failing as a country.
I mean, these days, the idea of a head coach being smacked in the head with blooming onions would be that'd be perfect. That would fit so well,
especially with these two teams.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes, they would. Number 11, Alabama versus Michigan. Alabama is favored by 12.5 points. The AJ Fun Index is a not so fun 43.5. AJ, what do you quick thought about this one? Who's gonna take it?
Hey, Alabama, this is your chance to show that you big mean strong boys, if you really mean it. I hope, honestly, just now after all this talk that we just had about the first round of the playoffs, crappy. Cover your ears here, ear muffin for me.
Go ahead.
I really hope Michigan beats the hell out of Alabama. Just for the Alabama would have made the playoff. You lost to Michigan and Tampa. Get out of here.
Carla?
This game is interesting to me only because, do either of these teams care about this game?
Right. Nope.
Right. This is just one of those, both of these teams did not have the seasons that they wanted. Yeah, I'm kind of with you, AJ. I would love to see nothing more than Michigan to just beat the brains off of Alabama. And I think it's possible if they pull out of the playbook what they did to Ohio State.
Yeah.
If they can slog down Alabama, Michigan can absolutely win this game on a neutral site. So I hate to say that I am on board the Michigan bandwagon for this game, but go Big Ten.
It is throwing me off here looking at the ESPN scoreboard that shows number 11 Alabama 9-3 and 7-5 Michigan. This is the freeze frame of what you have of this is how I ended up here. This is just brand recognition is all we're doing. We're putting something on noon on New Year's Eve. Boom,
it is
go.
In normal circumstance, this could be the highest rated bowl game, but because it's the Rylie Quest Bowl and not a playoff game, it's not happening.
This was the Rose Bowl last year.
Yeah, exactly.
How far they've fallen.
Carla is correct officially. This is Go Big Ten. I want the conference to do well. Even this team that is involved. I think the Wolverines could win this game. I don't think they will, but man, I don't want to say I'm rooting. That would be incorrect. But it would make me happy for the Big Ten to win this game. At 2 p.m. on CBS, the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl in lovely El Paso, Texas. Washington versus Louisville. The Cardinals are favored by 2.5 points. The AJ Fun Index is 49.5. Carla, how's this going to go?
I have no idea because I'm not really even sure what players are still with both of these teams at this point.
Excellent point.
But what I will say is that Louisville actually did have a pretty good year.
Mm-hmm.
Washington fell off quite a bit after their miraculous run last year.
Yes.
Louisville was a little bit more consistent. I think they're probably the pick here, but we talk about this, the Sun Bowl is the most beautiful bowl game to watch.
Yes.
So have this game on for no other reason than that. I was actually surprised to see the Fun Index was as low as it was in this game. I think that's probably due to Louisville's defense because Louisville's defense is actually pretty good. Ask Clemson about that. But yeah, I'll take the Cards here in the bowl game. But this is just one of those games that it's kind of like the Holiday Bowl that we've got on right now, and it's just the classic. It's always a good game.
Absolutely.
Although that being said, Pitt gave us a stinker of a game a few years back, and we will never ever let that one live down.
There are always exceptions.
That game is in. By the way, that game is in full on YouTube. If you want to hate yourself, it is fully out there. You can watch 3-0 over. Sorry, I spoiled the game. It's 3-0.
We've talked about it over and over and over again. At this point,
has anyone done a countdown on that game, where to backtrack it so that the game ends at midnight on New Year's Eve?
No, wait, no. Is it when the game ends or when the one field goal is kicked?
Ooh, good point.
It depends on when was that field goal kicked. Wasn't it kicked in the first half?
Hold
I
on.
think that's
hold
right.
on.
I think that's right because I think they went through.
2008 Sun Bowl. All right, and this is
Because it was kicked in the first half. That takes
It
the
is
fun
in
out
the
of it.
sec. It is in the sec. It's with 2 minutes and 18 seconds left in the second quarter.
Yeah.
So you could only hate
That
yourself
is-
and watch half of the Sun Bowl.
Okay.
And
let's see.
No, but the hating yourself really comes during the second half. I mean, that's
that is
that
true.
is the test. If you are really
Pitt
committed, you're going to
Sun
watch the whole game.
Bowl. The worst. No, it was in full. The 2008 Sun Bowl is on, or the 2022 Sun Bowl. That's the thumbnail is a really creepy Chip Kelly smile. Hold on. I'm just trying to make sure that I could see where it is. Okay, no, there's only a 1 hour. There's a 1 hour version.
Okay.
Sorry. I want to shout out to YouTube user Wine and Lobos for their shaky hand footage. It is an 18-second long video of just the field goal from the stands. It's not even the TV view. It's just from the stands.
Excellent.
And there it is.
Speaking of hating yourself, that's
Yeah.
yes, that's fantastic.
So there's a 1 hour version on YouTube. You can watch it as an hour and 12 minutes long.
You hate yourself a little bit
And,
less.
Yeah, an hour to 12 minutes long. And so I guess you would have to start it at, what would that be? 11, 10, 50,
10:50,
10:48.
10:48.
There's some seconds in there.
Okay.
So yeah, put the 75th annual Sun Bowl on the 1 hour
Count it down.
version, and then at midnight the game mercifully ends. So
And you can start 2025 with a clean, with having reached your moment of zen. That would be AJ.
it was. And by the way, that was the Brute Sun Bowl, so you could celebrate with a glass of champagne at the end.
nice.
Baby.
Okay, was that Brute like the aftershave or Brute the champagne?
Oh shit, wrong one. Shit.
Important
Sorry,
distinction
I'm
to make.
swearing.
Important distinction to make.
I think it is. Ooh, is it the
You
Brute
probably
Sun Bowl?
need to ingest a bunch of shaving cream after watching that game.
Was it the?
Oh,
And this
something-
show, friends, has gone completely off the rails
something
thanks
to-
to the
Well,
2008
what?
Sun Bowl.
something to get
Why
the
would we have
stink off of-
rails?
We don't.
Also true.
AJ, do you have thoughts about this year's game?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't know Washington was bowl eligible. Let's go with that.
Washington's bowl eligible. I mean, they had a nice year. Given
I'm not saying they had a
personnel
bad year.
losses
I'm just
they did.
saying, it was the men's grooming products. It was
Okay.
in fact.
Okay.
Don't drink that.
Don't drink that.
Don't drink that Brute. That's the wrong Brute. But it's fine.
Okay. The reason you watch this game is because it is, besides the Rose Bowl, it is the second most beautiful bowl setting in the country. Anyway, and it does not have the same history as the Rose Bowl, but it's got like mountains right there. This, as in the stadium is built into the mountains. The sun is starting to go down. It is just an incredible setting. I think Louisville's going to win. It doesn't matter. Just turn the game on and watch it because, number one, it's one of the very few bowl games that is out of the clutches of ESPN, and number two, it just looks like what bowl season should look like.
Also, it looks like Louisville's a net importer in the portal this year.
Okay.
Including they got USC's former quarterback Miller Moss.
Yes, they
as a
did.
transfer coming in
Yes,
for
they
next
did.
year. But also down here, they have a edge rusher who's not from South Carolina. Last name is Clowney. His currently he's transferring from Charlotte. It is Demon Clowney. And man, Demon Clowney is such a cool name.
Demon needs to get out of the Bible Belt. Louisville's
adjacent,
kind of southern, but not really.
No, don't you? No. This is for all the Louisville people out there.
Please.
I believe you are southern. You are fully southern. I promise.
Okay, it
but,
is the northernmost southern city, and also kind of the southernmost northern city. And I say that as someone who's familiar to both, because I lived.
He's
I lived
Jadavian.
outside.
He's Jadavian Clowney's cousin.
Nice. Okay.
So.
Excellent. We have one more non-playoff bowl game to mention at 3:30. I did not write down the network. I believe this is ESPN.
Yes.
Kinder's Texas Bowl in lovely Houston, Texas. Baylor versus the Louisiana State University. Baylor is favored by 2. The AJ Fun Index is an actually fun 59.5. And for that reason, AJ, you get first crack at this one. How's it going to go?
I don't know. I mean, I'm actually looking up to see who is not going to be playing in this game.
Mm.
All of the big players are coming in. CJ Daniels, their wide receiver, transferred out to Miami. Deshaun Womack, who's an edge rusher, is transferring to Ole Miss. That'll be fun next year. I mean,
is Nussmeier playing? I didn't bother to look.
I didn't look either.
Okay.
I'll say this: it'll probably be pointsy and stupid. There's a not small contingent of LSU fans who would like Dave Aranda to come home and be their defensive coordinator again.
Okay,
and that'll be fun. Also, Baylor fans having to interact with LSU fans is a delightful culture shock that I would like to see. There's going to be people who are getting lightly ridiculed, but also being offered jambalaya.
Yes.
So, which will be too spicy.
Jambalaya
and people of Baylor
bourbon.
So I need to go down to LSU at some point in my life. I need to go see that.
Yeah, that'd be fun. But my dad has been to Ohio State played down there in the 80s at some point. And it was a tie game. I don't remember what the score was. But that was in the pre-overtime years, and but my father had a blast, which is not surprising to me. Carla, how is the Kinder's Texas Bowl gonna go?
Well, I just looked. Nussmeier is in fact going to play because he is returning to LSU next year to play his senior season.
Okay.
And he's been doing pregame or pre-bowl media. So, so he is in fact playing. This game just be pointsy as heck. This is one of those stupid bowl games like we're watching tonight, where there's just points on points on points. And so this is another one of those, go double box here with the Sun Bowl. To see a whole bunch of points. Sure, I'll say LSU, with Nussmeier going to play. I think they'll probably have the edge there. But yeah, this game's just gonna be pointsy as heck.
I looked up some defensive statistics, which just sort of out of habit, and I don't. It doesn't matter if Nussmeier is playing. LSU, I think, just the difference in talent level is going to win a tight, stupidly fun game that you should make sure you watch. And then our actual purpose for being here this evening and recording another show, the quarterfinal games. Again, we start on New Year's Eve without any interruptions from extraneous bowl games at 7:30. This game is most definitely on ESPN. The Vrbo Fiesta Bowl in lovely Glendale, Arizona. Number 6. These are seeds now, not playoff rankings. Number 6, Penn State versus number 3, Boise State. Penn State is favored by 11. The AJ Fun Index is 52.5. AJ, please take this one. I'm going to go second. Well, Carla will give you the last word on this.
I am very interested to see Ashton Jeanty against a bigger defensive line and a bigger linebacker core. He has been made to look mortal in a number of games this year. UNLV was the first one to do it, where they basically put 9 men in the box. They have very good linebackers, and they were able to hold him to 140 yards on 31 carries. Hawaii did it the next week, which was also very fun, because Hawaii actually had a pretty okay defense this year. I'm interested to see that against the Penn State defense and what Boise can do to move around that. Because in the UNLV game, they had Maddox Madsen, and I said this all about the Mountain West Championship game when they were going to play UNLV again. They made Maddox Madsen beat them, and he did. It wasn't very good. I expect to see Penn State cover handily here. This is not going to have the same home field advantage that the first round games had.
Right.
Boise doesn't have to travel that far, but it is still very far from top to bottom in this country. And I expect to see Penn State go out and get themselves a win.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The two times Boise State played ranked teams against Oregon, kind of at I think the second week of the season, and UNLV in the title game. But although both the games, as you mentioned, both the games against UNLV were the regular season game was really tight, a lot more scoring. The Mountain West title game was 21-7, but in both games, Jeanty got his yards, 192 and 3 touchdowns against Oregon, 209 against UNLV with 1 touchdown. He's going to get yards. Penn State will be charged with keeping him out of the end zone, making him, let him move the ball, and then as you said, AJ, you load up the box and make Maddox Madsen be the guy who's got to beat you. I think this is a fairly comfortable win for Penn State. Although Boise State historically has performed well on kind of the bright lights of bowl games, including in playoff games. So or in New Year's Six games. So I think especially if Penn State is able to run its offense, the good offense, not the conservative one. I think this is a fairly comfortable win for Penn State. Carla, what do you think about this?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, defense played lights out. Penn State defense played lights out in the first round against SMU. And that defense is going to be a necessity heading into this game. But as I'm looking at the playoff slate, I will be perfectly frank here and say if there were any teams that I felt could put 9 in the box to try to slow down Ashton Jeanty, my picks would probably have been Ohio State and Penn State to be able to do that. Right. Penn State defense last week, and I know I've been critical of them and slowing down the run, and they didn't have a great night against Oregon, although they did hold their running back against Oregon in the Big Ten title game to less than 100 yards, even though it didn't feel like it when I was watching the game live. I mean,
Right.
he had 86 yards, I think, on the night. That defense bottled up. Gosh, I didn't write his name down. Oh, Brashard Smith. Yeah. They bottled up Brashard Smith. Right. And Brashard Smith has the ability to kind of break some things open for SMU. Brashard Smith had 62 yards of rushing against that Penn State defense. And overall, SMU had just 58 total yards rushing. Again, like AJ mentioned, home field played a huge factor in that opening round, first round win.
Sure.
Kevin Jennings was rattled the whole bit, right? The Penn State defense is going to have to get its mojo from somewhere else. And they need to find that quickly because they obviously fed off of the crowd in that, it was the defense that got the team going.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they fed off the crowd to get it going. They're going to have to find that energy somewhere else. Now, the one good thing is that I will say is that, as we know, some of your larger fan bases, again, here's the haves and haves nots, AJ, right? These big fan bases travel well, particularly to the Fiesta Bowl. Penn State always does well in the Fiesta Bowl, and I have no idea why that is, whether it's just like everybody wants to get the hell out of Pennsylvania and go to Arizona for a couple weeks. Like, I get it. But Penn State has always done well in the Fiesta Bowl when they've been sent there. That's not to knock anything here, but against that Boise offense. I mean, obviously your key here is you've got to stop Ashton Jeanty. You're not going to be able to completely stop him. You have to be able to slow him down and force Maddox Madsen to be able to beat you. And I talked to my dad about this. We've been talking a lot since the first round win, and I said, I'm a little nervous about trying to slow down Jeanty enough to be able to secure the win here. And he said, yeah, but Penn State has 2 running backs. And if you go and you look at the statistics, Nick and Katron last week against SMU combined for 229 on the
Okay.
ground.
Okay.
229 on the ground, just the two of them, and that doesn't even count in the 50. Or no, that was in the Big Ten title game. I'm sorry, because they didn't need them
But
last week.
still, the,
But
the,
Big
the
Ten
point
title
is they
game,
have a two-headed running back.
they have a two-headed running back, and
Yeah.
you have Drew Aller,
Mm-hmm.
who has the ability now to run around the outside when he needs to,
Yeah.
right? I think Penn State gets the win here.
Mhm.
I don't know if they cover. I don't know if they
Okay.
cover. I know everybody else is like, yeah, they've got this in the bag. I don't feel as confident as that, but I feel like this is a good matchup for Penn State, particularly with how hot the defense played last week. There was a lot of discussion, and we didn't talk about this with like the way the playoff was set up with particularly today, some of the like the halftime and like the rain delay that they had to fill,
Right.
surprisingly, on the would you rather have the bye or would you rather have momentum going into the next game? I think Penn State having momentum going into this game was the right move for them as a
Mhm.
team.
Mhm.
I think they needed that first round game against SMU to really kind of sort some things out, really get that defense going. And then to throw them into a situation where they really kind of have to be a little bit one-dimensional on defense.
Mhm.
I think that's a good setup for my Nits, and I think we're moving on to the next round in a game that I hope ends well on New Year's Eve.
We could ask Lane Kiffin about whether or not a bye is better than maybe he has some thoughts. I don't know. Um,
Doesn't
uh,
he have motivational quotes and like, gosh,
I
I'm just so
think
blessed
I
things to
think
post on
so.
Instagram?
I think
Don't you have more
so.
time, Lane?
I
Lane,
think
you got
so.
time. What are you doing now? It's not like you have a
Um,
bowl game to prep
the
for.
the I was that the Liberty. Which game was which?
Liberty
Uh,
Bowl just finished.
Liberty Bowl just finished. Arkansas won that fairly handily. A lot of points. Kind of big fun. We're gonna turn
And now we
off
got another good game coming on.
and another good game coming on. But I am doing my single screen here. Maybe on. Did I do that? There we go. Syracuse 35, Washington 21. Washington State 21. Pardon me. And that game is 6 minutes left in the third quarter, so still doable. We're having fun on a bowl game on a lovely bowl game evening. Next up, a game that I might want to pay attention to. And AJ, I'm going to apologize in advance because we're going to be at your house for the first half, and I am you've seen me in action, and that's just sorry. 5 p.m. ESPN Rose Bowl, Pasadena. No,
Oh,
what
no,
am I doing?
no.
Did
There's
I
a
skip a
game
game?
before that. Crappy
There's a
on
game.
1 p.m. on ESPN.
I'm jumping the gun because I'm excited about the Peach Bowl. Good Lord, Wednesday, January 1st, 1 p.m. Also ESPN. It is the Peach Bowl, brought to you by Chick-fil-A in lovely downtown Atlanta, Georgia. Number 5, Texas versus number 4, Arizona State. Texas is favored by 13. The AJ Fun Index is a sort of fun 51.5 points. Carla, how's this going to go?
Yes. Well, I mean, first of all, you have to wonder if Texas is getting really tired of going to the Benzodome at this point.
Just
'Cause-
stay. Just
just
stay
stay.
there.
Yeah. So they just kind of have like a direct flight now. They just like I don't know. So we know Arizona State. Arizona State is Cam Scatabo. He's how they get going. So like this is simple for Texas, right? You gotta prevent Cam Scatabo from getting that big play early.
Yes, you do.
The big play early is what catapulted them to the Big 12 title because he had a huge run right at the beginning of the game. And then it was just off to the races, right? Texas has to prevent that from happening. I still don't know what to make of Texas. Like, I can't believe we're saying that. We're 17 weeks
Totally
into
agree.
the season
I
here.
absolutely agree.
And I don't know what to make of them. Statistically, they're one of the top defensive units in the country against the pass. And yet, last week, Cade Klubnik almost beat them in the first round with his arm. And they're like number 2 in the country statistically against the pass. And so now I agreed. Like there was a lot of like storylines happening in that Clemson Texas game,
Yep.
right? With Klubnik's Texas roots and having played each other in a Texas State championship game a few years earlier. And, it was actually kind of a really cool thing that happened. Texas managed to escape out of that. And so, but like, I want to say this is a Texas team that should be able to slow down Scatabo enough to force a young Sam Levitt, who is a freshman, by the way,
Mhm.
Sam Levitt to try to beat them with his arm. That's not always what we see from the Horns defensively this year. Um, that being said, the Texas offense should actually have some room to work
Right.
because Arizona State is good, not great
Yeah,
defensively,
that's a good way to put it.
allowing close to 340 yards per game. And I think that's the difference here. I think Scatabo is going to have a day.
Mhm.
I think he's going to get his yards. I think Arizona State's going to make this interesting, but I'm not sure that Arizona State can slow down Texas and Quinn Ewers and that newly found run game that they've established.
Right.
I'm not sure they're going to be able to stop them enough to be able to keep up. I think Texas wins this game, but it's way close, and they're going to get real tired of like playing these sweat 'em out games in the Benzo Dome. But I think Texas escapes
Okay.
and punches their ticket to the next round.
Okay. AJ, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is the interesting one. And I also think something we didn't talk about with the first round games is, man, it's crazy when you have 3 weeks to prepare for an opponent,
Right.
right? You
Right.
had all the opportunity to prepare for this. And honestly, when you look at the bracket, it's Arizona State. We're the bye, and we know that we're facing the winner of Clemson and Texas.
Mhm.
So we'll prep for both teams, and we'll watch the game, and then we'll prep for the other one on the way out. Right? They've had the extra week. They have Camp Scatabo. Does their defense play better? Does their defense have the opportunity? Because again, they also have practice time. They also have additional reps here. So
Mhm.
it's just like bowl practices. I am interested to see can they can Arizona State get stops on Texas early? Because we've seen a number of times this year Texas just kind of fart around for a while.
Mhm.
We saw it in the Arkansas game where like they just couldn't get out of like first gear, they couldn't get out of second gear for most of the first quarter, most of the first half, and you're sitting there at halftime. And you're like, Texas is only up like 13-6. What's happening here? Um, I think this is the opportunity that you have as Arizona State to make some moves. You have the ability to create explosive plays. You're not really worried about a hometown crowd. As Carla mentioned, this is in Mercedes-Benz, so they're not playing in Texas. They're not at the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah.
On the flip side, Texas doesn't have to go to effectively a home game if Arizona State would have gotten the Fiesta Bowl instead.
Right. Right.
So this is a fairly neutral site game for both of these teams. I am expecting to see Arizona State make this a lot closer. I still think Texas wins off of just has more dudes,
Mhm.
but I'm interested to see if Arizona State can really keep this close. I think this will still be very, very close at halftime.
Okay. Okay. Um, Washington State just scored. Point after is pending, but that is looking like it's going to be a fun game going into the fourth quarter. Um, I, I, this should be a tough go for the Arizona State offense. Texas is top 10 every defensive statistic that you can think of. But Carla, you are exactly right when you say I am not sold on completely on the Longhorns being in the position that they are. I granted I've watched them in their just in their biggest games when they are playing very, very good competition. Um, and but I'm not, I don't know that they are the team that they, the statistics suggest they are. Scatabo is a beast. The coaching staff at Arizona State has had a long time to prepare for this game. Um, Texas, AJ, Texas has more dudes. I think that is the key to this game. And I think Texas is going to win, but 13-point spread feels generous. Given Arizona State's position, I think this is going to be a tight one. If Texas can kind of lean on its running game, which it has discovered in the latter part of the season, that's going to help them. Um, but this will be fun to want to watch because it's going to be close at the end of the game. It's going to be close in the fourth quarter, and then uh, anything can happen, especially with a team that has such a long time to prepare. Texas wins, but they have an uncomfortable January 1st in the Mercedes-Benz Dome. Can we talk about Ohio State now?
Hold on, new
No?
merch.
Oh, good.
New merch. Uncomfortable New Year's Day.
That'd be fine. That'd be fine.
I've had several of those in a Rose Bowl, I can remember.
Oh man, I've had more of those in the Rose Bowl that I want to remember. Speaking of the Rose Bowl,
Indiana fans everywhere punching the air. Let me have an uncomfortable Rose Bowl. You're so mad. I've had so many sad times in the Rose Bowl. Indiana fans haven't seen the Rose Bowl since '63 or whatever.
at 5 p.m. And AJ, once again, I apologize. ESPN Rose Bowl, I think brought to you by Prudential. The Rose Bowl game in lovely Pasadena, California. Number 8, Ohio State versus number 1, Oregon. Ohio State is favored by 2.5 points. The AJ Fun Index is 55.5. AJ, how's this going to go?
There we go.
There you go.
I think the big thing that we've talked about this in previous years, especially with the group of 5 conferences. It's hard to beat another. It's hard to beat a team twice. See also Boise State, UNLV.
Yes.
What was it? Jacksonville State and Western Kentucky this year.
Yep.
It's hard to do. I'm interested to see how these teams have changed. The thing that I noticed in the Big Ten championship game is Oregon's defense is not as good as you would like it to be if you were the number 1 team and everybody believes is the most dominant team in the country.
Yep.
I was watching Penn State slice and dice that defense. The main difference in that game was Oregon was slicing and dicing Penn State and did that more successfully than Penn State sliced and diced Oregon. I think if you get the play that Ohio State got against Tennessee, congratulations, Bucks, you got a date on January 10th. The game that they played earlier in the season, by the way, is one of the best games of the year. Ohio State, Oregon was tremendous. And honestly, Ohio State could have won that game, and it was just choices were made at the end of the game.
Yep.
And I don't fault anybody. I do fault Ryan Day a little bit. You had a timeout, you dummy. But I don't fault Will Howard for sliding
Absolutely not.
2 seconds too late. Like his head is in the game. He's looking to not he's looking out for somebody who's trying to hurt him, not watching the clock. Okay, slide. Right. I don't necessarily blame him. I think that Ohio State has a distinct chance to win this game. I think if they beat Oregon, they are making a significant statement that, okay, no, we're for real right now. And in my mind, the winner of this game is the favorite to win the whole thing. I think it's very interesting to see Penn State's path to the playoff, where you go SMU and then Boise State, compared to Ohio State getting Tennessee and Oregon versus Texas getting Clemson and Arizona State, right? Ohio State has probably the harder path through. And I think they have a distinct chance to beat Oregon. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Bucks here. I think this is a big deal. Plus, it's also nice to see, a true Big Ten Pac-12 matchup in the Rose Bowl. We love to see this.
Beautiful thing.
And by the way, Crappy, it'll be fine. I'll have chicken. It'll be all right.
Okay. I'll eat lots of chicken and try to be happy. Carla, how's this going to go?
Well, okay, so some notes here. I don't know if I actually ever got. I was rereading my notes here, and I'm not sure I ever picked a winner, but I can say I now have the benefit of having seen Oregon in person,
Right.
And what I can say is that I was absolutely impressed by the speed and decision making of Jordan James at running back. Now he only ended up with like 80 some yards, as I mentioned during my Penn State breakdown, but like He has a way of just making a decision and going. And when he hits that hole, he goes.
I agree. Yeah.
He goes.
Yes.
And so that will be a challenge here because we all know that Dylan Gabriel is a good quarterback, and we know that Tez Johnson is a beast as a wide receiver. That was painful to watch all afternoon,
Mhm.
or all evening. The difference here is that like that was a weakness that I knew the Ducks would be able to exploit against Penn State because that's their biggest weakness on defense is the
Mhm.
deep secondary, right?
Mhm.
Um, Ohio State, however, is much more equipped to go defend that elite wide receiver than Penn State is.
Okay. Yeah.
Like your defense is built better in that
Mhm.
regard. And so I think that like that's your key, right? Is like to like slow down Dylan Gabriel and that in the deep ball and the big play,
Mhm.
right? Which Ohio State's defense has always been able to do. That's the one
Mhm.
thing that you've always done better than Penn State. Um, and so defensively, the Ducks will give you a bit of room to run that football, right?
Mhm.
As I just mentioned, both Key and Nick had 100-yard games in the Big Ten title games. They both had more than 100 yards in that game.
Yes.
And so you need to go dig up that seemingly somewhat neglected ground game
Mhm. Right. Right.
and get your ground game going a little bit because the Ducks are going to let you run the football. Like AJ said, this is a team that has some weak spots defensively, more so than you would want your number one team in the country to have,
Mhm.
and one of them is defending the run. So you need to get that ground game going in that first round. Your Bucks relied heavily on Will Howard as the defense was able to you were able to rattle Nico, right?
Mhm.
And neutralize that Vols offense. That's not going to work with a Heisman finalist in the backfield,
Right.
right? So that's the reason why you've got to establish that ground game and get your offense going in that way. I think if you can get a ground game going, and you can slow down Gabriel and Johnson, that's going to give you enough of an edge that your offense is going to be able to get going and
Mhm.
be able to win this game. This is going to be a delight. I know you're it'll be an uncomfortable New Year's Day for yes, we do need that shirt now.
We do. Yes, we do.
An uncomfortable New Year's afternoon for you, but I am very much looking forward to watching this game because, like you said, it's tough to beat a team twice in the same year. Um, and I think the defensive holes that Oregon has
Mhm.
is going to give you a window to be able to
Yeah.
potentially get it back this game. Um, I'll go ahead and pick Ohio State. It's gonna be a real tight game, real
Mhm.
tight game. Come down to the end of the fourth quarter, but I think that defensive weakness from that we just couldn't get over the hump
Mhm.
in the Big Ten title game. It just couldn't get there. Um, yeah, Bucks win in a really tight game.
Okay. Okay. Um, uh, when these teams met in October, there were a couple things defensively for Ohio State that that were problems. Um, Ohio State's cornerbacks did not have a good day, especially Denzel Burke, who going into the season was kind of like a consensus lockdown. This is a guy you don't want to throw the ball in his direction. Um, Other thing was scrambles by Dylan Gabriel. Uh, it, I don't that's something he has to be accounted for. Um, when Ohio State, whether or we're rushing the passer or dealing with a running game, there maybe we spy him. But there's got to be something like that. Um, Perhaps we'll see a little more zone defense to kind of to protect the cornerbacks a little bit. Although both of those guys are playing better than they were on October 12th. Uh, the defense overall, um, it feels like that Ohio State is playing better than it was at that point of the season. Um, Run up some very gaudy statistics in the early part of the Big Ten season in the non-conference schedule. Uh, but I think this is a different looking defense than Oregon got to see in October. On the other side of the ball, a game plan similar to what was dialed up against Tennessee is going to help a lot. I do remember being annoyed about some kind of conservative play calling, although That could just be that could be what does Herbstreit call us, the fringe, the lunatic fringe. I don't think I'm one of those people, but
there's a you don't want to be part of the lunatic fringe of Ohio State fans.
no, you don't. And I'm but Ohio State still rushed for 141, not great. Threw for 326 in the first game. I think a little more creativity along the lines of what we saw with Tennessee. A lot of misdirection. I that's going to help Ohio State's offense move the ball, even against Oregon's speed on defense, which was has been so impressive. I think if you kind of get them moving in one direction and head back the other, a lot of counter plays against Tennessee. That stuff can work against a team that pursues like Oregon does. This is a winnable game for either team. And I think it is the best game of the quarterfinals. I am picking Ohio State to move on, and I think particularly if we get the kind of performance that we saw against Tennessee, this will turn out the way I want it to, and Ohio State will move on. We wrap up New Year's Day at 8:45 p.m. In the is it still the Nokia Sugar Bowl? Is that I didn't write down
It's the
sponsors.
Allstate Sugar Bowl.
The Allstate Sugar Bowl. Thank you very much.
The sugar is in your hands. That's how that works, right?
Oh. At 8:45 p.m., the Allstate Sugar Bowl in lovely New Orleans, Louisiana. Number 7, again, these are seeds. Number 7, Notre Dame versus number 2, Georgia. Bulldogs are favored by 2. To be fair, this is also a really interesting game. AJ Fun Index is 43.5. Carla, how's this going to go?
That's a nice pitch. Thank you.
Yeah,
Who's the bigger loss here, Carson Beck or Rylie Mills?
Yeah.
Right? Like that's kind of where I am at this point in this game, because obviously Carson Beck definitely out, had season-ending surgery this week. That would seem to be a huge deal in this game. But then Gunnar Stockton stepped in during the SEC title game and played with poise as if he'd been the starter all season. Now his numbers weren't great, but he had the poise that he needed. But that being said, Georgia won that game with 277 total yards of offense.
Right.
Woof.
Right. Yes.
Right. And so that's what Georgia does, right? This season they want to slow you down. That's how they beat Texas twice. That's how they, that's how they've won some of these games, is just by trying to slow the game down, make it a game within the trenches. And if there are 2 units that I vastly underestimated in the first round of the playoffs, Notre Dame's lines. Vastly underestimated them. Notre Dame was absolutely dominant in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Good grief. So for a game that Georgia would like to make physical, the Irish might be ready for that kind of slugfest.
Right.
The challenge there, though, is that you lost Rylie Mills, who's your key defensive tackle, the guy who rushed and put pressure on your young quarterback. So it's with Mills, Notre Dame was the 8th best total defense in the country. You don't have Mills. What are you? We don't know.
Right.
Because at that point, when Mills came out of the game, that's when Indiana started scoring. That's when that happened, is when Mills came out of the game. Now at that point, that game was so far gone, you don't know if that was the primary reason why that happened. You don't. Right. You can't attribute that because, Notre Dame was up 3 scores at that point. But that's still I'm scratching my head about that now. They still rank, that's still way above 8th total defense in the country, still far above Georgia's ranking at, believe it or not, 35th. I was stunned to see that statistically Georgia's defense is 35th in the country in total defense. So my challenge in picking this game is pretty simple. Every time we count Georgia out in a game, they find a way to win. They found a way to win twice over Texas.
True.
right? My gut here says that not having Carson Beck is the bigger loss.
Mm-hmm.
And Notre Dame is going to find a way to win this game. But dang it all, Georgia's going to make it real interesting because that's just who they are. So I'm going to hedge my bet here and say that Notre Dame is the only like kind of underdog team at this point
Mm-hmm.
to pull off the win in the quarterfinals.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't feel good about that pick at all. I really don't because Georgia just keeps finding ways to win football games.
Okay. Okay.
But on paper, I think Notre Dame's the pick.
All right. AJ, what do you think?
This game's going to be violent. This game is going to be about hitting.
Yeah.
I think the loss of Carson Beck is bigger than people expect.
Mm.
Honestly, in two different directions, because there's been a run this season of Carson Beck looking like garbage. Looking at you, Florida game. Looking at you, Ole Miss game.
Mm-hmm.
Games where, one, Georgia lost against Ole Miss. Georgia should have lost to Florida if DJ Lagway doesn't get hurt. I think that game is either a lot closer, if not Florida pulling out a victory. And this is a bigger, I think this is a bigger deal than a lot of people are making it out to be. I don't think Georgia has, I don't know who Georgia's, running back is that you would rely upon to go smash mouth this game.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all are about to see Georgia go full Iowa. I don't think you guys understand that. Georgia's going to go full Iowa. They're like, we don't have an offense, so we're just going to try to slow you down. We're going to try and defense our way through this.
Mm-hmm.
But the Georgia Tech game was super interesting to me because of the way they Georgia Tech picked apart certain parts of that offense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Rylie Leonard this is what a statement I'm about to make. Rylie Leonard isn't Haynes King. What a statement in the year of our Lord 2024.
Right.
He's not that guy. However, Rylie Leonard is not a great passer, and neither is Haynes King. Rylie Leonard has relied upon his legs all season, and I think he makes that night real rough. And I'm picking the Irish.
Okay.
Mostly, also, do you want to hear some people who are going to be mad? Georgia losing to Notre Dame. Alabama fans will not let them hear the end of that nonsense. You lost to Notre Dame. You're supposed to beat them by 45 in the championship game or whatever they try to get themselves into. And out comes a loss in New Orleans. You are in the prime of SEC country too. This is in New Orleans in the Sugar Bowl. So, this could be hilarious.
That is more SEC than Atlanta is. And
by the way,
should be. Yes.
Notre Dame did beat an SEC team this year. In week 1 in College Station.
Yep.
They beat Texas A&M.
In an absolute night game, absolutely insane atmosphere. And Notre Dame handled its business.
Correct. Which is why I think this gets very interesting. And Georgia not really having Gunnar Stockton is fine, but there's a reason he's the backup. And there's a reason why they kept Carson Beck in the games for as long as they did, even when he was throwing 3-4 picks at a time. They didn't put Gunnar in.
That's a great point. Yes.
So
yes.
I'm picking the Irish here.
Okay. There are an interesting Vegas thing to note. Notre Dame opened as the favorite with at 1.5 point favorite before the line moved to favor the Bulldogs. Make that what you will. ESPN's matchup predictor is still favoring Notre Dame by I think Notre Dame is to 53.7 percent favored to win by whatever they test. I agree that the biggest variable is Georgia's quarterback. Interesting side note. I know of at least one Pittsburgh-based Georgia fan. And AJ and Carla, you may know Eleanor's Trouser.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I was going back and forth with her on I think on Blue Sky during Georgia's during the SEC title game, and she's like, Gunner Stockton is a good Georgia kid. Carson Beck is a Gator at heart. I don't care what anybody says, but he's from Florida. We are in a better position with Gunner Stockton.
Gunner's from Bainbridge or some, like, he's from like the hick part, the super hick
She
part of
said
Georgia,
that
too.
is exactly that is she said he is from the hills of Georgia where and she's yes, she said she suggested exactly that
Rabun County, that's what it is.
Rabun County. Okay.
This man was born in Tiger, Georgia.
That's fantastic.
The population of that is currently 574 people.
Okay, very good, very good. He did. I agree. And Carla, you said this. He looked comfortable, looked poised in the SEC title game. Did not look. Did not was not great. But ran the offense. He is perfectly capable, I think, of throwing short passes, of doing the kind of a West Coast offense sort of thing, where you know the passes kind of replace the running game. You can also hand the ball off. He, he can be a game manager, probably. But Notre Dame's strength up front, and Carly, you mentioned this as well, on both sides of the ball. They are beastly. They are physical. They love the challenge of just beating you to death, even with losses via injury. That is going to be the difference for this game. Notre Dame can play ball control. They can do it better than Georgia will. They can handle Georgia's running game, which is going to be the big factor in this bowl game. Notre Dame's going to play defense. They're going to finish sustained drives to keep this game under control, and the Irish are going to move on, which would mean they play Penn State next time. We'll get to that. Boys and girls, you can hear the Carla and Crappy Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, and a variety of other podcasting hosts. You can watch us on YouTube and or on the show's Facebook page. We would prefer if you watch us both places. You can read us on our Substack. If you like us, please subscribe, rate, and review. If you don't, mind your own damn business. And whatever you do, be sure to come back at some point in the next few days when we will talk about the national semifinals. But you want to come back and see exactly how wrong we were. Guys, do we have any final thoughts? AJ, starting with you. What you got?
I think now the playoff will make more sense to people. You're going to see the potential. There's potential for blowout with Penn State, Boise. There's potential for blowout with Texas, Arizona State. Mm-hmm. But Ohio State, Oregon, and Notre Dame, Georgia are going to make some people forget about some stuff for a little bit.
Yes.
You're going to get to a semifinals. You're going to get to a final. It's going to be good. Mm-hmm. I think the problem that we run into overall is we want to make the quick take. We want the quick feeling on it. And it's like, no, let this happen a little bit. Yeah, we might have got it wrong a little bit, but that's okay. Mm-hmm. And we'll figure it out later. But this is going to be better overall. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really what's going to shine through the New Year's Eve, New Year's Day games.
Okay. Carla, final thoughts from you?
Just as a reminder that after we get through these quarterfinals, which I guess maybe we should just rebrand them as the New Year's 4 at this point, because we moved 2 bowls to the next, they're no longer the New Year's 6. So
right.
I don't know.
I mean, they're bowls in the new year.
Yeah.
So I think you could kind of flip it that way if you want to, even though one of them is on New Year's Eve. I
Mhm.
guess.
Mhm.
Right, but it was that way during New Year's Six anyway. Like
Right.
there's always
That's
one
true.
on New Year's Eve,
That's
but
true.
whatever. Just a reminder that Bowlapalooza is not over. Right? There like after we get through these quarterfinal games, it's gonna feel like a landing spot, right? But we got a game on Thursday night. We got two
Yes.
games on Friday. The two games
Yes.
on Friday, January 3rd, we talked about both of those in Bowlapalooza. And then we cap things off with a Saturday, January 4th. And then, hey, we turn around and have more football on the following Thursday on the
Mhm.
9th and then
Mhm.
Friday the 10th. Um, so yeah, so there's still football to be watched. Don't shut your brain off. After we get done with
Nope.
New Year's
Nope.
Day, we got more games to watch.
I will say it is weird to watch the playoff games happen, but then like up here's Coastal and UTSA.
A little
Like
bit. Yes.
Right.
that part's been weird. I'll say that.
That is absolutely true. But what as if you guys remember, AJ gave us the standings, and there are two Bowlapalooza games that have been decided right now.
And Friday the
So
3rd
there's a
is two
whole bunch
games.
left. And by the way, I have procured this year's Bowlapalooza trophy.
Woo.
And I'm not going to show you guys what it is, mostly because it's out in my car. But
That's fair.
yeah,
That's fair.
but it's spectacular. It's a little bit of a departure,
Okay.
little bit of a departure, but
He found a Steelers bobblehead.
no, I did not. I absolutely did not. The last thing I wanted to bring up, I hinted at this before. The team that knocked Carnegie Mellon out of the Division III playoffs will in fact be playing for the Division III national championship and perhaps the first national championship to be earned by the state of Ohio this football season. The Amos Alonzo Stag Bowl game, that's the name for the D3 championship game, will be played in Houston. In I don't remember the name of the stadium. It's a Houston soccer building, 20,000 seat, where the Houston Dynamo play their home games. 8 p.m. January 5th on ESPN. My Mount Union Purple Raiders, and I say my kind of loosely because I'm from Ohio and I've always sort of liked these guys, versus the North Central College, whatever it is they are. I did not write that down for some reason. They are from Naperville, Illinois. They both teams are undefeated. North Central has been beating the crap out of everybody, whereas Mountain Union played a classic game against I think John Carroll in the
Johns
semifinal.
Hopkins.
Johns Hopkins, thank you. They played John Carroll earlier in the playoffs. That is
Yeah, if
where
your
I
name
got
is
mixed up.
John, Mount Union's going to ruin your day.
Yes, yeah, it's just that's just going to happen. That game was tight. I would have to look at North Central as the favorite coming into this. But Mount Union has 40 or 50 D3 championships. So they have history on their side. But if you are looking for a quick shot of amazing college football, 8 p.m. January 5th, ESPN D3 title game. Be sure to check that out. And with that, boys and girls, we have wrapped up yet another Carla and Crappy show. We will be back to preview the semifinal games. We will decide at some point when we're going to get together to tape that one. But for right now, um, we're going to get the show out as quickly as we can. Neither Carla nor I are working, so we can probably do that fairly quickly.
Mhm.
So you'll have enjoy the games this weekend. You've got that whole Sunday where the other football people do their thing.
What?
Yeah, it's a
What?
if you turn on
What's
the
that called?
TV, if you turn on the TV, you'll come across it. It's
Oh.
almost yeah.
I'm DVRing the games I'm going to miss tomorrow because my
Mhm.
husband and I have holiday plans.
Mhm.
So I can watch those on Sunday.
Nice, perfect. That is an excellent suggestion. It's not going to help
It's
our
Pop Tarts
listeners
Bowls tomorrow, right?
Pop-Tarts Bowls
Pop-Tarts
tomorrow, and
Bowls
I'm going to miss
tomorrow
it live.
with
So you better believe I'm
the
DVRing
damn
that.
actual toaster trophy.
Yes,
With the
I
toaster
know.
and the trophy. The MVP gets to pick which Pop Tart goes in the toaster.
Ooh,
That's what the MVP of the game gets, which
This is me.
just tremendous content.
If you think back to November, when I mentally suggested to you to watch OU play 3 days before you actually heard the show. It's not going to be 3 days this time, but it will be before. Watch the Pop-Tart Bowl. Watch the bowl games on Saturday, because there are a ton of
They're
them.
her bunch.
Yeah, there are a ton of them, and it's going to be awesome. Guys, Carla and AJ, thank you guys again so much. It has been fantastic talking to you about this stuff, and I look forward to do it even more. Boys and girls, thank you for watching, for reading, for listening, for doing all the things that you do for the show. We have started dancing. I'm not sure why.
Motion, and I just saw motion and I went with it.
I did.
It was Carla started it.
I think
you kind of got into sing-song mode, and I kind of felt like we were having a drinking song or something. I don't know.
If you still have teams in the game, I hope they do well. Even for the folks in Ann Arbor, we have covered that. Enjoy college football's postseason, bowl games, playoffs, and we will see you back here probably sometime next week for a discussion of the National College Football Playoff semifinals. Cheers, everybody. We'll see you again soon.
Cheers.